morning. We have a good crowd here. I see some visitors. I've already met a few. We're just always thrilled to have guests each week here across town. And we're just so thankful to be out on this beautiful, beautiful fall Sunday morning, Lord's Day. Just enjoying some great, great fall weather. And now we're in October, so it's a trick-or-treat month, I guess. So we're in the middle of now that start of that fall season. And we're glad that we've got a lot of good activities coming up on the calendar. It's going to be a busy next couple of months, and hope that you're making notes of those events and activities, and want you to be a part of it, because those have been designed and planned for your benefit, whether that's the fall retreat or the outreach or the trunk retreat or activities with ladies or the youth. That really that's the whole congregation next Sunday at 5 o'clock. Really want to encourage you to think about coming and hearing Dr. Jim Baird. You'll be blessed to hear him. And so just a lot of great, great things going on, and hope that you'll take advantage of these activities. Well, we are continuing our series going through the Bible, and so we are just a couple of weeks now we have, and then we'll start the New Testament in just a couple of Sundays. So as we begin, and we're going to have new reading schedules out, because I know that there are a lot of you that have kind of fallen by the wayside, have not been doing the readings maybe lately or for a while. So we want to give you that opportunity to pick up in the reading schedule, and as we start the New Testament here in a couple of weeks. So, but we got to finish out the Old Testament. We're at the tail end of the Old Testament history in our Old Testament. Yeah, we have the Bible this morning. Let's hold those Bibles up. The Bible check. All righty, good. All right, turn over to the book of Esther. We'll be over in the book of Esther in just a moment. All right, here we go. Ready for that slide now. Too excited to hit the button. Have you ever had those times in your life where you just felt small? Ever had those times when you felt small? Situations, circumstances, maybe kind of metaphorically, like this picture here. Times where you just felt small. Maybe simple things. I remember I was in elementary, and I probably was second or third grade, but one of the older boys I think he was a grade ahead of me. He was picking on boys, and he picked on me for a while. And I remember one time he made a threat that he was going to get some of us after school when the bell rang. And I mean, when the bell rang, and he probably I think he's told that to us early in the morning, so I had to wait all day, and deal with this bully. And say, well, I have to get out of that. Well, I think I had two older brothers that I had called upon and pleaded for some help. One of them might have said, get him, but I think Ray my older brother Ray might have put that for me. But now you've been in those situations, you've been in those circumstances when life does that to us. Situations that kind of make you feel small. Maybe you sat in hospital rooms. Maybe you sat in doctor's offices where the diagnosis comes back, and you feel very, very small, and your heart melts. Maybe it's a phone call you get that just takes your breath away in a very tragic situation. Maybe it's a relationship you care about that's failing and even falling apart. Maybe it's something at work. Maybe it's something at school. Maybe it's a situation in the culture, in the world around us. Times where we just feel incredibly small. And I think in those moments like that, I think we can appreciate this period that we're reading about now at the end of the Old Testament, particularly here in the book of Esther. What it must have been like or felt like to be Israel. The Israelites had gone into captivity, Babylonian captivity. We've talked about that a couple of times now, the last couple of weeks. And God is, they go into exile for 70 years in Babylon. And, if you think about it, Israel wasn't that big to begin with. Exodus tells us that God didn't choose them because they were the largest people, but they were actually small, not a large people. And even before they went into captivity, 10 of the 12 tribes, 10 of the tribes in the north were taken away and destroyed in 722 BC, and it was just Judah and Benjamin in the south. And then here in 587 BC, Jerusalem is destroyed, the temple is burned down, thousands are slaughtered, and thousands upon thousands are taken into exile for 70 years. But God had prophesied through Jeremiah, the prophet, that they would only stay in Babylon 70 years. And after the end of that 70 years, Cyrus, we looked at the book Ezra last week, Cyrus makes the decree now of the Persian Empire that all people can go back to their homelands, and including the Jews. And 50,000 of the Jews leave Babylon, and they go back home. Now, if they were small to begin with, think how much smaller they are, those that remain, that didn't go back to Jerusalem. Well, the book of Esther is a story about some of those Jews who remained in Persia, now the ruling empire at the time. And so, yes, you have Ezra, and you have Haggai, and Nehemiah, and Zechariah, and those characters at the end of the Old Testament that will rally the folks back in Jerusalem to rebuild the city, rebuild the walls, rebuild the temple. But here's a story of some of the Jews who are still back in Persia, living in this foreign land. But they're doing what Jeremiah said. They're prospering, they're building, making the cities. They're praying for the peace of the city. And yet I think about how small and insignificant they must have felt, living in the vast kingdom of the Medo-Persian Empire now. They are now the dominant ruling nation. And so I think the book of Esther helps us get a sense of what God was doing in this time, what God was doing, what God can do at times when the world looms large in our own lives, and we feel insignificant and small. The book of Esther is a great, great book to encourage us in those moments. I want to start with a very pivotal verse that is the most well-known section of the book, here in Esther chapter 4. It's a very pivotal moment where Esther has a choice to make. She's in a position, she finds herself in a position with the king, Xerxes, and her adopted uncle or adopted father, Mordecai, is encouraging her to make a choice. And she could die. She could risk it all if she chooses to do this. Look at Esther chapter 4. And I think I have the verses up on the screen. Esther chapter 4, verses 12 through 16. When Esther's words were reported back to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And they say, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susha, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days and nights, 3 days, night or day, and I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Let's kind of just first break the story down, as I've often done here over these last several weeks, kind of in different sections or just kind of movements through this story. We can't get into the details of all 10 chapters, but kind of just follow the movement of the story here first, and then we'll draw a couple of observations. But notice, first of all, Xerxes throws a party. Everything you find in the book of Esther is over the top with the Persians. They don't do anything small here. And what we know about Xerxes, who is the king ruler at this time of the Medo-Persian Empire, is that he was an extravagant man. He was a man who was reckless, impulsive, and so he throws a party, but boy does he throw a party. For 6 months, Esther chapter 1 tells us that this isn't so some short little over one-night party for 6 months, it tells us. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth, verse 4 of chapter 1, of his kingdom and the splendor and the glory of his majesty. You know, I kind of envision it, you know, maybe you've seen those images of especially in years past, but you'll sometimes see these countries that want to show off that they're becoming a player on the world stage, kind of a superpower. They'll have these big parades with their military and their army, and sometimes you see these images, they parade their nuclear weapons out. You've seen that sometimes in North Korea or China, you know, where they have all this parade, the soldiers, and they're rolling out these missiles in the middle of the street. It's always very bizarre. What are they doing? They're displaying their power. They're saying, look at us. Watch out. That's what Xerxes is doing here. He's displaying his power, his majesty, his wealth here. And then what do to top off a 6-month celebration of this nature? You have a 7-day, just complete drunken fest, Mardi Gras, with your closest friends. A frat party with your closest friends. And that's what he begins to do as well in chapter 1. An open buffet, open bar. The text tells us that the men were able to show no restraint. They could drink as much as they want. And for 7 days they have this Mardi Gras here in Persia, in Susha. And at the end of the 7 days, well, they're black. They're gone, you can imagine. And to display more of their power, look how great my kingdom is, Xerxes said, I'll tell you what, go get my queen. Go get Vashti. And he wants to show off her beauty. He wants to display her. The text literally says that she was wearing her royal crown. And a lot of the ancient rabbis believe that she was being asked to come in and wear but pretty much only her royal crown. To show off her beauty. And look at his prized queen here. And it's incredible, to her credit, she says no. She has nothing to do with that. And I got to tell you, this is where Esther chapter 1, this is the story kind of gets funny a little bit. I mean, how I read this, and it's kind of humorous here. Look at verse 13 here of Esther chapter 1. That she says no, he becomes furious in verse 12. Verse 13 says it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice. He spoke to his wise men who understood the times. It's kind of a combination of Supreme Court justices and TMS reporters. It's kind of a mixture of those that know the times, those that know the law. We get their names here. And it says that, verse 15, according to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti? Here is the most powerful man in the world showing off his vast kingdom, and he can't even control his own queen. It's kind of the irony of this is really, really striking. And so he brings in his experts, and he says, what are we going to know about this? And they pass along. And basically their law is that, all right, the man is I'm paraphrasing, the man is the ruler of his house. You can smile. You can smile. To me, it's incredible here. The story just starts out with this irony because the most powerful man in the world is not even the most powerful man in his house. And this woman who doesn't get a lot of press, Vashti, she is an incredible woman of courage, and she says no to the king. We don't know exactly what happened to her. There's speculation that she might have been killed. We're not sure exactly. But she sets in motion her to preserve the dignity of women, and also sets in motion what we'll see is saving an entire race of people, as the story will open up and introduce us now to Esther, of course. And so you sent me this to the next section. You call it Miss Persia pageant. Is what maybe you can remember here. Chapter 2 opens up, and the king, he remembers, we don't know how much time has passed, but he remembers Vashti. And he gets lonely. And he wants another queen. And so you have this very odd mixture of kind of the longest reality show type, beauty pageant to pick up. They're going to have beauty treatments for 12 months, and then they'll parade them before the king. And the text tells us in verse 9, here's where we're introduced, of course, to Mordecai and to Esther. That Esther is also one taken in for this pageant. And it says that she was entrusted to the attendant of these women, and it says she pleased him, and notice, won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. That kind of language, it reminds us of other language we've encountered in the Bible thus far. It reminds us of Joseph. Remember, as he's sold into slavery and into Potiphar's house, he finds what? Favor with Potiphar. He elevates him to master of his house. And then later on, after he's thrown in jail, remember, Joseph finds favor with the jailkeeper. You find that here as well. Daniel would end up in this place, we know, as we looked at the story of Daniel in Babylon before this. And here Mordecai is a man of great compassion. He takes Esther in. We're not sure exactly. More than likely, he is her uncle. Some will say cousin. But he becomes an adopted father to her and takes her in. And, his advice is interesting. He kind of gives the opposite of what Daniel did. He tells Esther, don't display your Jewishness. Don't show them that you're a follower of the law. Eat the food. Keep your religion in that sense kind of concealed a little bit, which kind of fits what you see in the book of Esther, as we'll note here in just a little bit here. And so there's Esther, and she's in the courtyard at the king's palace, and they're going through all these beauty treatments. But there's Mordecai every day outside the gate, he's checking in on her. He's watching after her. And when he's out there one day, the text tells us, he overhears some of the king's guards have a plot to overthrow the king. And he goes and tells Esther. Esther tells the king, and these men are taken and stopped and killed. And we would expect Mordecai to get honored now. It would be the next thing. But we open up with chapter 3, and here's where the plot really begins to thicken in the story. Beginning in Esther chapter 3, we expect Mordecai to get honored. He stopped this foil of the plot to assassinate Xerxes, and we expect him to get honored. We're ready to read about Mordecai here, but now we're introduced to the main villain of the story, Haman. King Xerxes honored Haman. Hammedatha, son of Hammedatha, an Agagite. Incidentally, Agagite, you remember King Saul was told to go to the Amalekites and utterly destroy the Amalekites. Remember Agag. Interesting, Haman is a descendant of that king, Agag. It's just kind of a little interesting. You wonder if that played into his prejudice, his hatred for the Jews. People have a tendency to remember things for a long time, their family and their descendants. But anyway, Haman. Matter of fact, when they retell the story, Jews retell the story to this very day of the story of Esther. It's an interactive story when they tell the story, and the crowd will hiss every time Haman is mentioned because he is the villain here. And he is honored by Xerxes. So much so that when he passes by in the gate, the king's gate, all the officials are to bow down and honor him as the king had commanded. But Mordecai won't do that. And this is where it does parallel with Daniel's story. Mordecai refuses, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to bow down to this man. And I mean, Haman is like a spoiled brat. He just gets furious here. And even though he's been honored, the word gets back to him that Mordecai will not bow. This Jew that is and his people are in the land, he will not bow. And he goes to the king Xerxes and he pays a ton of money, 375 if you weigh out here the silver, that the king would make a law that everybody would have to, to bow down here. And again, Mordecai won't do it here. And Haman wants to not only now get Mordecai back, he begins to devise a plan to destroy, to annihilate the people of Mordecai, the Jewish people, the Jewish race. He is just crazy, vengeful. And he begins to plot, and he'll bring in his officials, and they'll roll the dice. The Purim is a feast we'll mention at the end here, but it comes from the word pour. And it's the dice is rolled. It's 11 months that will follow from this time when they will hire these mercenaries to come and basically assassinate and annihilate the Jews throughout the kingdom, throughout the nation. And again here, you read here, this is where Esther chapter 4 picks up the story, and Mordecai, of course, hears about this plot, finds out about the plot of Haman, and he will go to Esther, his adopted daughter, his niece, and that's when we read the verses in Esther 4, 12 through 16. He will say, don't think you can be excluded from this plot. They will find you out as well. You've kept your identity hidden. We've kept your identity hidden. You'll be discovered. Don't think that this won't come to you and your family. God will raise up someone else if you don't, but how do you know that God hasn't brought you at such a time as this? And of course, she makes the statement, just a beautiful statement of faith and courage. I will go to the king, and if I die, I will die. She asked him to have a fast for 3 days and 3 nights, and it's just a very, very moving scene here. Well, Esther will go into the king, and the king will receive her. She doesn't die, as the story gets into chapter 5. And the king is feeling good. And he tells her, she wants to ask him something. He says, ask whatever you want. Again, he's extravagant. He says, I'll give you up to half my kingdom. That's just kind of the man Xerxes was. And she says, well, I want to put a banquet, a feast on for you and Haman. And so Haman, he gets word of this as well, and he gets summoned to the king, and he's told, they want to have a feast in his honor him. He's feeling pretty good about it. Esther 5 and verse 13, he walks out of this meeting, and he runs in to Mordecai. He goes home here, tells his wife that he's been honored this way. But all this gives me no satisfaction, verse 13, as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting in the king's gate. Here he's got everything. He's got a position of prominence. He's been summoned, that he thinks he's going to get honored here with Esther and the king, and yet he's still filled with rage for Mordecai. And he just can't stand this. And so his wife, everything is over the top, as I told you, everything is extravagant. She says, why don't you build this big old gallows? Why don't you build this big old gallows that you can hang him? A 70-foot tall gallows. And, you got your influence with the king, the queen likes you, and you just come up with a reason to kill Mordecai and hang him on that gallows. So he builds this gallows right next to his house. And then you get into chapter 6 here, and it's really one of my favorite parts of the book, I think. I just love the story here as the plot continues to thicken. The king one night cannot sleep. Notice Esther chapter 6, verse 1. So he can't sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, and read the record of his reign. So he had him brought in the records, and they read to him. I guess if you can't sleep, read history. Maybe that'll put you to sleep, maybe. But the king here can't sleep, and so he calls in. And notice, he just happens to read of the record where these two officials of his, guards, tried to plot to kill him, overthrow him. The plot was ended. And he wants to know what honor was given to the man that discovered this. And what was done for the man that was done for this here. And then look at verse 4. The king said, the people said, nothing has been done for him. His attendants answered. Verse 4. The king said, who is in the court? Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about impelling Mordecai on the pole he had set for him. His attendants answered, Haman is standing in the court. Bring him in, the king answered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, what should be done for the man that the king delights to honor? Now notice here. Now Haman thought to himself, who is there that the king would rather honor than me? So he answered the king, for the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and the horse be entrusted to the one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man with the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. Look at verse 10. Go at once, the king commanded Haman. Get the robe and the horse and do just as you had suggested for Mordecai, the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended. I mean, folks, this is great stuff in the Bible. This is some good stuff. Hollywood couldn't write this come up with this any greater, and this is just incredible here. When he goes home, and his wife will say something I think very prophetic. She'll say, this isn't good. Kind of an understatement. And, again, Esther will have this another banquet, another feast. She'll have a couple of these. And basically, she will present herself to the king. He'll say, anything you want on behalf of my kingdom, I want to give you. And she says, all I want is the life of me, my people. That we're being plotted against, to be annihilated. And she doesn't even tell him. She's smart. She doesn't even tell him the name yet. She just says there's this plot to annihilate me and my people. He is so furious. He says, who would do this? And he's so upset he walks out. And it just so happens that as he walks out, Haman is so upset, he kind of wants to plead his case to Esther, and he kind of jumps at Esther, trips, falls on top of her. The king comes back in, sees this commotion, and I love the attendant that's here in the text as well. He's so full of rage here. One of these attendants say, "Hey, king, I just saw this 75-foot tall gallows. And it's right next to the palace. It's in Mordecai's house." And the king is so filled with rage that he will say, take him and hang him on his own gallows. And Esther will end up getting his estate. Mordecai will get his job. The story doesn't quite end there, though. In the last couple of chapters, you have the ending. This edict was still in effect, that Haman had already sealed the deal, hired these mercenaries, but they had 11 months to get ready. Because again, the dice was cast, and it landed here on this 11 months. And so basically the king will make another edict, and he will pretty much give the Jews permission to fight, to ward off this plot to kill them. And in the end, the Jews get a great victory. And they overcome them with the surprise that they have a great victory. This will lead to a feast that the Jews would institute called the Feast of Purim. And this is still celebrated to this day. It comes out of the book of Esther, rolling the dice. And in here. I want to give you two observations, two applications, I think, from this great story. One is that I think we see that when we feel small, insignificant, like no doubt Esther would have felt, we see that God works still in invisible ways. I don't know if you know this or not, but God's name is not mentioned one time in the book. It's not mentioned one time. There's no sacrifices, there's no, the only mention of worship is the fast. that they have. It's almost too conspicuous that God is absent here in a direct, visible way. You just have the empire ages trying to get through, stumble their way through this time. And God is lurking behind the scenes. I mean, you have this series of just coincidences. I mean, you have, the story starts where Vashti will refuse to come and display her beauty, and that will set up Esther with this beauty pageant. You will have Mordecai, who will just happen to be outside the king's gate, and he'll hear this plot to overthrow her, tell Esther. You have the king himself, who later on cannot sleep, and he's reading the history books of his records, and he just so happens to read about the plot that was found. And he wants to know what honor was given to the man. And it just so happens that it's Mordecai. And later on, it's just so happened that Haman already builds his own judgment for the gallows. It just so happens that the dice was rolled, and it gave the Jews 11 months. It gave some time for this plot, for them to assassinate the Jews. It gave some time for the Jews to overcome this. It's just one coincidence after another. Isn't that a coincidence? No. God is working. His timing behind the scenes. I don't know about you, but I need a story like Esther. Because not every time, I don't feel and sense those Mount Sinai moments a lot in my life. I don't have those burning bush moments. To be honest, I don't have those Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I feel small sometimes in this world. I feel insignificant. I don't know if you do as well at times. And I need a story like this for a God who works behind the scenes to provide, to work powerfully. I don't know what's going on in your life this morning, but it could be that God is working. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, could be opportunity. Could be God is working His plan, and His mission, and His purposes. We sing the great hymn, sometimes the older hymn, God moves in mysterious ways. Providential work of God. God sometimes is working there when He feels small and insignificant, and powerfully, but yet in invisible ways. It's the providential working of God. And I need that in my life. I need to remember that at times. And then I think also we need to never forget the power of one. Vashti stood up as the queen to the king, the most powerful man in the world, who's parading all of his power and might. She stands up to him. Esther preserves the Jewish nation because she stands up. Because she has the courage and the faith and the trust to do what was right. Years ago there was a poem. It says, I am only one, but I still am one. And I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. I like that. The power of one. That attitude, that spirit. That I might be here for a purpose. That I might be here at just the right time as this. You ever think about that in your life? You are here at just the right time. God has got you right where He wants you. Wherever that's at. Got anybody live in Tulsa here this morning? I'm talking to the city Tulsa, proper city Tulsa. Tell you what, let's go ahead and do the exercise here. Let's give you a moment to loose stand up. If you live in the city of Tulsa, go ahead and stand up. City of Tulsa. Okay? Alright, okay. How about anybody in Broken Arrow? You live in Broken Arrow, anybody? Address Broken Arrow? Alrighty. Let's see here now. We've got a bunch there. It tells us a lot. Anybody Bixby? Alright, there we go. We have some Bixby. Let me see here. Sand Springs. Anybody in Sand Springs? One. Let me see here. How about Owasso? I know we got some in Owasso. There we go. Some in Owasso. Anybody in Catoosa or Claremore, a little bit further north? How about Sapulpa? How about let's get down here further? Jinx? Anybody Jinx? Okay, I'd say Jinx. Limpole? Coweta? Okay. I see some that are sitting. Alright, what I miss here? We're at Collinsville. Okay, Collinsville. Get Collinsville up there. Why are they out up there? Alright, if you're not standing, you live somewhere ahead and be seated. What God can do if we will see this, that I'm where I'm at. Jinx, Tulsa, Broken Arrow, Owasso, whatever. I'm a school teacher. I work in a doctor's office. I work in a hospital. I go to school. I'm in middle school. I'm in elementary. I'm retired. I don't know where you're at, where you live. But are you here that God's got you here for such a time as this? What can God do in your life? What can God do in our life as a church? We're going to have this retreat coming up in a few weeks called I'm In. I'm in. We need a congregation at Crosstown where every member says, you can count on me.
Amen.
I'm going to participate in the life of this church. I'm not going to be a pew sitter. I'm not going to be a casual member. I want to be involved. I want to do something to contribute. Because here's the thing. What Mordecai tells Esther is, God will raise up somebody. Did you like that? Esther, if you don't do it, God's going to bring somebody. God is going to have His will accomplished. Don't you want your life to matter? Don't you want God to use your life? I want my life to matter. I want to have the mindset that God is active, that God can use my life to make a difference. We've got a congregation here that we've got the whole city of Tulsa covered. School, town, city, zip code for the most part. We are here for such a time as this. I hope we can take great courage and comfort from this story. How God can use our life to serve bigger purposes, to do great things, more than we can imagine. You weren't born in Persia. I wasn't born in Persia. I wasn't born in Europe or Africa or Asia. I'm living here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. God can use us powerfully. But we've got to allow ourselves to see that in our lives for such a time as this. Maybe you're here this morning and you realize that you've been on the fence. You realize that you're not walking with God as you should. Maybe you're behind the scenes, kind of just, you're not faithfully living for the Lord. Maybe you need to make some public changes. Maybe you say, I need to step out in faith and boldness and courage and conviction in my faith and say, Lord, I'm here to be used. I want to be used. I want to trust you. I believe that I am here for such a time as this. Maybe you're here and you've never obeyed the gospel. Your life can make a difference. The Lord loves you. He wants to save you. If you've never put Christ on in baptism, do that this morning. Rise up out of the waters of new creation. God will have a purpose and a plan in your life to work if you'll just trust Him. We can help in any way. Come as we stand and sing.
How do you explain